Welcome. This is another of our continuing Anything App meetings. What we'll do today is talk about our conference workshop webinar, App 2015. That's going to be in New Orleans, and that should really be a lot of fun, and we'll tell you about that. And then we'll talk about this Winning Entanglements We Are, which has what I believe is really an important objective, one which has been worked on, by me and others, but I think we've made some major progress here, and that is in really being able to predict what the probability is of the next We prediction being a hit. So taking the group data, can you get any sense of what that prediction will be in terms of the actual probability of it being a hit? Okay, so that's what we'll do, and then anything else you guys want to talk about, that'd be terrific. So we'll do that as well. Now, Deborah and Michelle, mostly Deborah's it turned out, just because Michelle's having a family issue with her dad, have put together a new website for app, and we launched that at the same time we put up the information about App 2015, and you can see the terrific kind of graphic she has here. Now, it's going to be June 22 to 25. The IRVA conference, International Remote Viewing Association conference, starts on the 26th. And so for many years now, we've always done ours before theirs so that people could fly in once and see both if they choose to. And a fair number of people actually decide to do both, but not all. That's obviously now optional. On the first day, the 22nd, that is going to be a day for training on ARV, enough remote viewing to do ARV. And then the 23rd through the 25th, we'll actually do 2 ARV predictions a day. And so you need already to be trained. So that'll be a requirement. Everybody else, I just saw your note.
I can see your screen, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, John.
I don't know what happened.
That's something.
I lost all of a sudden. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's something at your end. Okay, so, and in the details here, if you go to the app site, you can quickly get to the conference information. There's the detailed agenda. But we really have a good lineup of people. Joe is going to be there for all 4 days, and we'll be giving a webinar that'll go out to everybody, in addition to the people, of course, who will be at the conference. And then Joe Gallenberger, that I know many of you know, but he's been giving courses in Las Vegas for a very, very long time, that he calls psychokinesis courses, PK courses. And one of the things which are going to be very interesting to talk about and for all of us to think about is the connection with psychokinesis and precognition. You can actually look at both of those as being very closely entangled, if you will. I happen to think precognition is a bit more primary, but I think Joe thinks PK is a bit more primary, but they're clearly closely related. Now, Ed May is also going to be at the conference, and he's going to be talking about a relatively new model he's put together on the physics of precognition. So that too will be quite interesting. And he's going to do it, and we talked about this, for non-physicists in as simple terms as you can. Now, Dean Radin is also coming, but I'm sorry, Dean Radin is giving a presentation. He is not coming. He will be doing a webinar only, but his title is Precognition and Health. And that should be quite interesting. He's told me a little bit about what he's going to talk about, and it really is fascinating how your consciousness in a precognitive sense can give you clues that there are problems going on. And I've actually seen that as well. So anyway, so that should be very interesting to be able to listen to him and also to be talk about at the conference. And then we have talks by app people here. And again, you can look at the agenda to get the details, but they're all going to be quite interesting. So I'm really looking forward to that. Now, this fits in with the overall theme, which is living precognition, creating your future. And, you know, most of us have been around this for a long time and, in fact, have been living it. I think more and more we're being willing to expose it to other people, get out of the precognitive closet, if you will. And one of the things that's becoming, I think, clear is that if you're really getting into this for the long term, you do have to integrate it within your life. You need to find the time to do your sessions, to do your remote viewing, your judging, your feedback, talk about it with other people. You know, most of us kind of enjoy the group process, and so we really want to encourage more and more people to do that, and that's why this is really the theme of the whole conference is let's recognize that this is part of our life. Let's more and more start integrating it and being more open. Ultimately, certainly APP's goal is to educate society to the reality of precognition. And so integrating it in not only enough of your life to do it, but maybe start talking to other people and things like that. So that's kind of the overall theme. And when it can help you with health as well as wealth, that's certainly a good motivation for integrating it in your life. Okay, so we do have really good early bird discounts. Members can save $150 over what is going to be the price after March 15th, which is just a couple of weeks away. You know, it helps us to get a real sense of how many people we're going to have. So we're really encouraging people to sign up before. Now I got to ask, what's the definition of a member? Anyone who is on the app discussion list is a member. So we have encouraged people to join. Membership up to now has been free. All of you who are members are therefore on the discussion list are eligible for this $150 discount. There may be some people who went to previous, and I got to ask this specifically, to previous app webinars, but up to now have not decided to join the app discussion list. And if that's true, if they've been on a previous one, they too will be considered members. I mean, you know, we're generous. We'll put them on the discussion list, and they will count as members. So they too are eligible for the 150. With the launch of the website, we are now charging $50 a year to become a member to support app. I mean, we have expenses. We never really make any money to speak of on the conference, and so we've really decided that we need to charge a membership fee. So all of you are grandfathered in to the first of the year. We do have one person who's already paid, so that's sort of nice. And that person paid $50 to become a member, he then will get this $100 discount. So basically, and that will be the philosophy in the future, is that as a member, you will always get enough off to make it worthwhile like this. So had you paid $50, you would have indeed saved $50 as a member compared to the non-members. But non-members now will save $100.
So Marty, what will be the cost with the savings included for a member?
Well, that's certainly a reasonable question, and it's interesting. Well, let's do that. Let's go to the web, and because I never really even wrote that down. So let's go to the website and look that up. So, yeah, I should have put that down, Scott. That's obviously appropriate.
No, that's okay.
No, yeah.
I also have a few other people who aren't members yet that I think would be very interested in it.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, and those people will have to hopefully become members and come, but that's great.
So these people, if they join, they'll have to pay the $50 member fee at this point. Is that correct?
To become members, or they can,
Yes.
or they can get the $100 discount.
Okay.
So let's go to where the pricing is. And by the way, we have very good rates on the rooms. The normal rate is, I think, well over $200. Okay. So here are the costs for everything. If you want to go the full 4 days, including the introduction, it's $345 minus the $150. So those.
Wow, that's affordable. Really affordable.
Yeah, and that was the whole idea. I mean, we're not trying to make money as much as we are trying to get as many people as possible to come to this. So let me just see if I said that right to you. I might have not said that. 345.
Is the 345? Is that already after?
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, let me just make sure. Yeah, 495 will be after March 15th.
Okay.
So 345 is after the discount. Sorry.
Thanks, Marty.
Okay, it's not like I memorized these numbers.
No worries.
Yeah, and then 3 days. So that's for people who don't want to come for a refresher introduction cost. The full 3 days are $265. So that's less than $100 a day. And then people who, don't want to fly in or can't come for one reason or another, the webinar is $75 to get all 6 of the webinar talks. Okay.
Marty, quick question just for people that might want to attend so-called the webinar. I remember I was there last year, and I can't remember when there was a lot of videotaping taking place. Even though the people aren't there, is the entire thing being viewed by webinar or just segments? No. Okay.
The six talks
The six talks, okay.
So McMonagle's talk,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Gallenberger's talk, the psychokinetic talk,
Mm-hmm.
Ed May's talk, multiphasic model, Dean Radin's talk, precognition and health, my talk, and then there's a sixth, Deborah's talk, right now at least, is not planned to be a webinar talk. There's a sixth talk going on. So all of those will be what the webinar people will get for $75. And members, by the way, that's one of the things your $50 gets. Webinar people get all that for free.
Great.
Okay. I was really glad to hear, Scott, that you've got other people that you're talking to about this that hopefully will, sign up. And I urge everybody else who's, here and who's going to be listening to this on the video recording is to tell your friends. We want to get as many people as possible out here and involved in getting involved with precognition and app and enjoying what we have out here, which is worthwhile.
And Marty, I'll throw out one more quick question. Maybe you're going to cover this. I'm not sure, but regarding, I remember last year in Vegas, we could put in wagers because we were in Las Vegas.
Yes, thank you. You're really good. Yes, in fact, on the let me see if I can get us to the agenda.
I've never been to New Orleans. I'm looking forward to it because I hear the food is fabulous. But
right.
I don't know anything if they allow gambling there or not. So
no, and I'll show you what we're doing. Here's the schedule and agenda, which you get again right off one of these pages. And what we are doing for our wagering is we're getting involved in the foreign exchange market. So since that's live 24 hours a day, what we will be doing is making real trades and then allowing people who are there to cover any part of it. So I will be using my personal account, putting in a trade based on the predictions. So let's say the idea of the trade is to, just to use round numbers, to make $1,000. Some of the trades are going to be overnight. Some are going to be just for, like 3 hours. So it'll be a 3-hour trade so we can end it during the day, and then one trade that'll go overnight. And let's say the idea is to put in stops and limits at the level of $1,000. Anybody who is there can take a piece of that. And so they can wager whatever they want to. Dave has agreed to be the banker, so he will take the money based on that wagering. So that's what we've decided to do.
Okay. Thanks, Marty. So I just know a few of these people that I'm thinking that want to attend, they're probably going to say, well, this is going to be probably one of their first few questions they're going to ask is, if they put money into this and it's, for Forex, let's say they put $100 in, the stock goes up, whatever, do they get so-called paid their money plus whatever they made on their part?
Yes, it'll be, Dave will be the house. So we will come with cash, and he'll pay off with cash. And if we have to, we'll pay off with a check. But they will come with, they will go home with the money.
With whatever winnings are accomplished.
Whatever winnings they had. That's exactly right.
Okay, thanks, Marty.
Yeah.
There's Carlos, by the way. Hey, Carlos.
Hi, Carlos.
Joe Gallenberger, I've been reading his book, and you know all about him, Marty. He does craps, and there is Harrah's there in New Orleans. I wonder if he's going to want to offer to take people to Harrah's in the evening or some other time because people come to Vegas and they do get to bed, and here it's more less direct experience. but that would be a direct experience. Has that been discussed?
Yes, I discussed it with him. We are not going to do that. I asked if he wanted to do that in the evening, but he is going to use his approach to get us all set up to actually use PK to get, from his perspective, to get the correct Forex prediction. So it's basically all the energy is going to go into making one prediction, the first roll of the dice, if you will.
I see. Okay.
Marty, can I add something real quick?
For all of you, please. That's what this is all about.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. So, I took Joe Gallenberger. I had him as actually he was like the instructor for my gateway at TMI, mm-hmm. and then I took him. He taught MC Squared. I took that class with him, and then I took his Inner Vegas class out at Vegas. And I'm sure other people have as well. Mm-hmm. If anybody is interested in applying that principle, PK, whatever free time there is, and I'm sure there will be some, whether after this seminar, before, after, at some time, mm-hmm. and that you want to say, I want to apply these principles to the so-called craps table, okay, outside of whatever, is going to be, APP is going to be focused on, that I highly recommend you read Joe's book, Inner Vegas, and then I highly recommend if you have access to a casino somewhere and you're not familiar with craps, to go read his book, go to the casino, and just practice or just hang out there and get a feel for it. A lot of the success has to do with removing your fear, your doubt, and your anxiety. And that's truly what helps make that PK energy flourish and work for you.
Absolutely. And I think he's going to go over virtually all of those principles mm-hmm. during the day. If you look at the agenda, one day, the second day, well, the third day, if you count the intro as the first day, is his. He's got there both the morning and the afternoon before we do our prediction will be his, and he is going over all of those exact same principles. And in fact, if somebody wanted to go to Harris in the evening, they certainly could, because and actually apply it to crafts and other things as well.
Sure.
So yeah, good. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay. So that tell your friends about all this. Are there any other questions and comments about what we're going to be doing in New Orleans?
One question is, what's the capacity of the room on Monday and the other 3 days? Is it like 50 or 25?
It's the same room. The capacity, well, it's 50. It's 50. We can get 50 people in there comfortably, and that's what we're shooting for. 40 to 50 people is what we would like to get.
Okay, thanks.
And that's true. It's the same room for the intro as for the full main conference.
Now, if people feel they can't afford the hotel, are there other accommodations nearby that are any cheaper, Airbnb or anything?
Yes, because we're right in the middle of the French Quarter, right adjacent to Bourbon Street, so we've got really a wonderful location. On the other hand, they gave us a really good discount, that 125, 128 right. Price happens to be very good. However, yeah. I'm sure off the beaten road a little bit, you probably could do better. I mean, I haven't checked that out personally, but that's generally the case.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, excellent. Okay, let's go on to topic 2, and let me just start right here with what the objective is. I'm calling this we are. I sort of like the sound of that. And I think you understand what that is. It's winning entanglements because that's, where all the data is now and what I've written this for, using the R programming language. But I do want you to know that most of what is being done here can be done with any of the other ARV groups, because the basic idea is to use a statistical measure, and all the ARV people have to do is take the differences of whatever confidence ranking they're using. If they're using HARGS 1, that's fine, but I know some people use a measure of 1 to 4. They could use the difference of the two rankings between the two potential targets, and all of these same concepts would work. So the basic idea here, and that's where my focus is going to be right now, is to have you really understand what I think is very important, the importance of this. And that is to put together a quantitative way of actually getting a prediction of the probability of your next prediction being a hit. Here we are coming together, and we then put out and wager on a prediction. Wouldn't it be nice to know what the probability of that prediction being a hit would be? That might, for example, open up the whole way of modifying how much you wager. I mean, if you can show that you have a prediction at 80% of the time, you believe that prediction will be accurate 80% of the time. And that's where we're headed with this. We want to be able to have enough predictions, say at the 80% level, and have 50 of those and show that 40 of those were in fact correct. And so the next time you come up with an 80% prediction, you might be willing to wager a bit more than when it was a 60% prediction. And so there's real value in this. And if your prediction is at the level of only 50%, you might not want to wager at all. So that's why this is so important. And, this then opens up the same thing for other ARV kinds of questions. ARV has applications other than wagering. We're focusing on wagering now because it's so nice and quantitative, and it'll have an impact on society. But this idea of getting a sense of what the probability is of, in fact, getting a hit is extremely important. In fact, I see it as related to what people have tried many times to do in regular remote viewing, when they look at the remote viewer with a fMRI and try to get signatures in the brain for when the good information is coming in. That's always been one of the things where a lot of attention has been paid. As far as I know, they've never been successful at that in terms of finding a signature in a brain scan of some sort that says, this information is the right information. In many ways, that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to come up with a probabilistic way of doing that. And I think that's important. In fact, even with the fMRI stuff, one of the weaknesses may very well be they're looking for something which is going to work every time. And I think the field we're in is very probabilistic in nature. Now, another part of this is this is really all new stuff, and it's very important for all of us who are involved in this and who are going to be using it to know that there are going to be ongoing improvements, and there just needs to be continued validation of this whole probabilistic approach that we're using with R. And that's why I really hope we can get a kind of a team going here. Now, I'm only going to give you the highest level overview of what we is, and that's really all most of you need and probably even want. But what we is about is doing precognition, but in a group environment. And the focus is on you doing 2 ARV sessions. You're able to get the coordinates and everything online. You do 2 ARV sessions. You now do the independent analysis and judging. I started out doing most of the work for independent judging. It's a lot harder to organize. We then went into analysis and judging. In fact, as far as I know, Greg Kay was the first one to put out a formal, I don't know if it was a paper, but certainly a discussion on that. And since then, we've been doing both, and we frankly see no difference in our results. Self-judging, in fact, has a lot of advantages. A lot of people like it. Some people don't. If you don't like it, don't do it. You shouldn't become a part of we. If you have a deep mindset that says you need to do independent analysis, independent judging. If that's how you feel, we is really not for you, because I believe it's really important to be totally self-consistent. And so if you have in your belief system that you need to do ARV with independent analysis, you should do independent analysis and find somebody to do that with. And that's why we have multiple groups in app.
Hey, Marty, this is Scott again. Quick question. This kind of goes to a little bit of Joe McMoneagle's teaching method, and I'm not advocating that it is the perfect method, but I know you've been working with Joe for many years, and you probably heard him say this. But do you feel his ideology is that an RVer should really not judge their own work too much because it can detract from accuracy? And I was wondering, have you seen people who have been doing self-judging for a while, whether they've lost accuracy or they happen to be very accurate, where it has no effect on accuracy at all?
My conclusion is it has no effect on accuracy at all as long as you feel comfortable with it. And we have many viewers that have done analysis for a long time. In fact, I'll have one example I'll show you. She's at over the 70% hit rate level. So, it works fine. And yes, Joe doesn't believe in it. And also remote viewing, it's the old idea of why we all didn't believe in it at the beginning, is you're afraid that somehow while you're judging, you're going to pick up that information. But if you have that fear and you don't believe your subconscious is powerful enough to get over it, see, I do. And in fact, I've seen so many cases where people have forgotten to put something down on the piece of paper, and they say, oh my, I got that in my session, it came from my subconscious, and I am going to I now know that this is the correct target.
Yes.
So a lot of people really take to self-judging.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's controversial. That's why that's why it's good for us to talk about it and mention it. But we is based on self-analysis and judging, and in a not too difficult way, if you wanted to, you could bring in an independent judge. Just give them your username and you tell them, hey, I put my sessions up there, and you could actually do it with an independent judge, but as far as I know, nobody is doing that yet. Then, as always, you now do your 2 feedback sessions. And this is, you do your feedback sessions, and then you enter your confidence rankings online. So it's really pretty standard ARV. The nice part is it's all online. It goes directly to the server where all the data is. And of course, that's one of the things we've always been interested in, and now we have lots of data, and we get it directly. And this data benefits us as a group now. I get to look at everybody who's in the group, their data for making a group management decision, but in addition, you have access to this data. Now, so you do these steps, of course, but then does the group analysis. And the only thing I want to tell you about the analysis now, because I'm about to show you some plots, is that we use something we call LZ. The L stands for Lauer, who kind of brought the idea of using a standard kind of statistical measure. He brought it in the context of noise, trying to get a noise measurement. And it's related to normal distribution curves. Some of you who know about that will be able to relate to that, but you don't have to. The key thing is that it is a measure which you get out of the confidence ranking differences. So that's why virtually any ARV approach can use this, because there's always 2 targets that you judge. And you take the average of those, and then you divide that by what is a standard deviation of those same differences. It's not like it's really complicated in a mathematical, statistical sense. But that's one of the measures of many you can think of, actually. But this is the one that we're using, and I'll show you where we are with that. The standard deviation is just, for those of you who don't have any kind of math and statistical background, is just something like taking the differences and just considering them all to be positive and some sort of mean of the positive after you've squared it. Anyway, it's a measure which is rather standard in the statistical field, and it's very simple to calculate. Now, there is a webinar out there back in December where we went over this in lots of detail, and you can look that up. And I guess if you email me, I'll try to find that link and give it to you for those of you who want the details who weren't there. But again, I don't think the details are as important as understanding what this graph means. And that is this measure which I just told you about, this LZ, which comes from each one of the group predictions. So from any one group prediction, out comes an LZ value by looking at all of the confidence ranking differences from all of the viewers. Okay, so we get an LZ, and that LZ leads to what is either a hit or a miss, right? And so we mark that in our computer memory bank, if you will, for that particular group prediction as a 0 or a 1. Now, we can take all of those LZs and order them from the lowest to the highest. And then you can make a chart like this, which has the following meaning. And that is, for any given z, which is basically LZ of your next prediction, what is the hit rate that you would expect for that LZ? So, if on your next prediction you had an LZ of around 1, based on all the previous data, which you're showing here, you could expect a hit rate in the 0.55 to 0.6 range based on a chart like this. The fact that there's a trend at all is another way of demonstrating that precognition is real. If precognition were not real, what you would get would be variations like this. It wouldn't matter what the LZ was. It wouldn't matter that when you had larger differences in the confidence rankings, because LZ is roughly proportional to the big differences in the confidence ranking, you wouldn't see a trend like this. So we can develop graphs like this based on all the data, and that gives us the ability to now make a prediction of what the probability is, what the probability of the next hit being. Okay, now this was back in December 15. One of the things which is very important here is this stable? Okay, well, here we are now as of February 19th, like a week or so ago, and here is the equivalent, the same data. We now have more data. I don't really even know how many points we have here. But here we have 166 points, and the 10 highest are not shown. Even here, the 10 highest are not shown, and I'll show you why in a moment. But the highest one shown here is like at 0.63, 63%, 0.63 is the fraction, which means the 10 highest one plus this one average at that. Here the highest one shown is about the same, maybe a little higher. So the 10 highest are just not shown here. But notice the nature of the curve is very much the same. You have at a 1 a probability of about 0.55 up to a little over 6. And we'll obviously, as we get more and more data, keep watching that. Wouldn't that be interesting if this was a kind of universal curve? But, you know, I think we might expect if you had a whole bunch of people who were better or who were getting better, that this mean curve, okay, it's called the least square fit curve, maybe over time that might move. That might move up. We're going to see, because we'll be following this. I mean, our intention here is to be with this for a very long time. Now, this same data, to make the point of the top 10, this is the same data here, done the same day, 7/23, yep, 7/23, where the top 10 points are also shown. So the highest LZ we received here was an LZ of 12. Since this curve has been ordered, so what you're seeing are the LZ, the probability of a hit for LZ at that value or greater, what this tells you is there was a hit for an LZ of 12 because this is at 100%. The second highest LZ also had a hit because these two now were at a hit rate of 100%. Here's a third one at an LZ of 4. So our data is showing that when we had an LZ of 4 for a group, that also was a hit. But look at the next one. That was a miss for an LZ just a little lower than 4. That would have been called displacement because this was a miss. Notice the average is at 75%, right? I'm trying to make sure you understand, you see what's involved here. This one was a miss because this one you can see is the hit rate for this case, this case and all the ones above. So we had one miss, 3 hits, that's 75%. So that's how you interpret this point here. Okay? And then here's the next one here. That was a miss, right? We're now down at 60%. We have 2 misses and 3 hits. So that's why that point is down there. So I really showed this to try to make plain how you use these curves, even when I don't show the top 10. And you can see why I wouldn't show the top 10. It's a lot harder to get real values out of this. But also, you know, it oscillates a lot more. So this curve are all the same points, taking out the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I guess. Okay, so I really hope you understand this because this is a real quantitative way with uncertainty, but that's the real world we live in, but we have a measure here of how uncertain it is for any next prediction we make that'll be on this chart. We did our first use of this in terms of actually giving Firefly, using this curve, a prediction. And now we did it with one of the other variations we're looking at, but we actually have started using this now. And so I wanted to make that point. And also, we're doing variations. As always, in any of these models, there are multiple parameters. For example, what if you only look at the viewers who gave you a prediction where one of the confidence rankings was over 3.5? Also, it turned out to be helpful to ignore those cases where there was only one viewer. Our data goes back quite a ways, and there were numbers of cases where there was only one viewer. So we're looking at all of those probabilities as well. Any questions or anything up to that? I'm about to go into something else that's closely related to it, but do you understand this well enough? Okay.
Hey, Marty, I have a couple quick questions on this. So
Good.
just to make sure I understand this correctly, is let's say the group is going to do a prediction, let's say like next Wednesday.
Right.
You're going to do a pre-ARV kind of focus session on that future prediction before it even takes place.
That is correct, and that's the programming I've been doing.
That's it. Okay. So I'm just curious. Have you maybe it's been tried? I'm just curious if you've tried it like after on Wednesday, the ARV session takes place, and let's say for the most part, let's say the group gets saying they're in the 85% range, saying this prediction is going to take place, and then you do this prediction, this step afterwards before you actually place the wager. It's kind of like a backup. Have you tried it from that way afterwards to see like what's the
Well, okay, let me tell you the equivalent of that. We do it before. I'm doing that now all the time. I showed you one example, but now that's a standard part of my analysis as the group manager. Scott, who also manages a we group, as part of this development group, which he wants to be a part of, he will get access to that too. So he will be able to see this data before and use it as part of his analysis for making the group prediction. He may not be totally confident in it, and he may want to use individual viewers, which I'm going to show you before. So we do that. But then after the prediction is done, which is the point you're making, that point gets on this graph and influences it. So it changes this. If this graph were to start going down and going towards random, we wouldn't want to see that. But yes, that's being measured by being on this graph. Okay?
So isn't another scenario that we get 10 people turning in a transcript,
mm-hmm.
and you'll give us a group score and say they're all in the same group, and we get a high LZ because there's big differences between, we had some 5s where people said, one side is a 5 and one side is a 2, and that's a big difference,
right,
on the TAG scale.
Right.
So we get a high LZ, and then we can get a single number out of that, which would be a prediction for, it'll be what the chances are.
2, right.
Yeah, what the chances are that this will be a success.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be useful, and then in Firefly we might have 3 groups in one day,
mm-hmm.
and the people deciding on whether Firefly should bet with that group or not. So if my group comes up with it has 10 viewers and it comes up with a high score with a 65% probability,
mm-hmm.
based on your thing here, then you can say, okay, I'm going to give that group a lot of weight, even if other groups, if this group says up, but if a couple other groups say down and they have a low LZ score, then I'm going to give extra weight to this group. Because looking at all the past predictions, we have a 65% chance that this prediction is going to be right, and it's going to go up, and that the currency is going to go up. So that's a possible use for this, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll go one step further. I hope all of the group managers, I'm certainly encouraging them now, and we talk to each other as group managers. All the group managers will, in fact, in a way that they feel is appropriate, because that's sort of the job of a group manager, is to use their best judgment, any way they think is appropriate, of coming up with an estimate of the hit rate. Now, Firefly is doing that automatically because we're keeping our Firefly data, so we can look back at how that group is doing and just use the simple hit rate approach. But that in the past has not been all that successful, just because it varies. Though that may be the best that you can do, I'm hoping this approach will do better than that, because it gets a little bit more into the details of each individual prediction. But this is the cumulative hit rate here. But if you were to put a probability on, like in Firefly where you have multiple groups now, if you could put a probability on each one of those, you could make a quantitative judgment on which way to go.
So it'll help, as a group manager, it would help me 2 ways. It would help decide whether I want whether the group is going to go decide on up or down, and then the Firefly people can also look at that and say, okay, this up or down prediction, what is the probability that that's correct?
That's exactly right.
What kind of weight should I give this as I combine 3 groups, 3 predictions?
Yep. Yes. And I think we'll actually be able to even help Firefly a little bit by getting a bit more quantitative with multiple groups, maybe. But let's not talk about that now. But what you said is exactly right, Scott. You understand. You understand this. Now let's go.
Marty, yeah, if you explain this page, maybe I'll get some questions cleared up because I'm still a little foggy. You know me on this stuff.
Well, no, but go ahead, ask your question now.
No, I think you can explain that individual.
Okay.
Before you start here real quick, so you know Sonya's in chicken dinner too, right? And you're isolating just for Sage stuff here?
Interesting. I think this is all of her data, but all that got printed was Sage. Does that fit with only having 13, your sense of it? I think this is all of her data, and my program didn't print out the second group she's in.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
It's probably her whole Wii career.
Yeah. This is why I'd love to have a development team. And you're already doing it, Scott, by asking those kind of questions, but that should be clear. Now, let me explain this plot. So this is Sonny Miller's data using this WeAre program. And this is with the option of only looking at her transcripts that have a CR max of 3.5. In one prediction by one person gives you actually 4 CRs. That's one of the nice advantages of, in my opinion, of so you get more data even from one prediction. I mean, it requires 2 sessions, but from one person. So this plot is just the pretty standard cumulative hit rate over session number, so over time. So this was her first session, it was a hit. Her second session was a hit, so she had a cumulative of 100%. Her third one was a miss, so there's 0.666%. Next one was a hit. Hit, miss, hit, miss, hit, leading to a total of 70%. So that's what this graph is. This one is the Z that I just told you all about, calculated in exactly the same way. So, and she's got a very nice trend going here. These are all the points. If you take off the last 10, obviously you wouldn't have anything. Even here you've got the beginning of what looks like it's statistically significant. And that's because her high Z's here, you can see she had 4 hits at 100%, and then she got her miss here. But this is really very nice from her perspective. Now, one of the things I did in the program, and I did it arbitrarily a while ago when I was programming this, was I put a maximum of 0.8 in terms of these P's. The P's are based on the last prediction. See, I use this in the morning before there's an outcome, but in the cases where there's already an outcome, it still puts the P there. It takes the last one. So this is what would you say for the next prediction, and I've maximized that at 80%. Can change that or not, but in the way the program is written now, that's why this peaks at 80%. And here you can see with 70%, I use the last point as here's one way you might make that prediction. Okay, so I think you understand these two. This one, it turns out with one person and only 4 statistics, this number can get very, very, very high. In fact, there have been cases where it got to be infinite because the standard deviation, if you remember, it was the average divided by a standard deviation, went to 0. So I've rather arbitrarily, on these plots, stopped this at 10. That's big enough. This is like a normal distribution Z, and 10 is certainly big enough. So I put in another measure where, based on everything I've seen so far, a reasonable standard deviation is 2. Just looking at all the data, it's very close to 2. And so I said, let's fix the standard deviation and just use the mean divided by 2. And that gives this kind of curve. Again, there are just 2 different ways of looking at the data, and this would be where she would have been on this kind of curve, again up at 0.8. So she's one of the better curves. I can tell you they don't all look like this, but hers is excellent. So that's what this curve is. It's closely related to this one, but we've fixed the standard deviation. Now here we start bringing in the confidence ranking differences. So you see here it says CR differences. This is the confidence ranking difference in terms of the same approach where we've ordered them and then come up with the hit rate. As you can see, I'm not interested in making this look pretty. I'm interested in understanding what's going on, and so I've just used the symbols that are kind of meaningful for me, but I'm explaining them to you. These are all hit rates as all the other plots are. So here you can see differences: 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. Her highest difference is 4. Here I've shown the same data, but in a histogram kind of format, where the blue is a hit, which we show as a 1, and the 0 is a miss, which is red. And you can see she had 1 hit here at the level of a 4. She had, where her CR differences were 3.5, she had 4 of those which were hits and 1 which was a miss. So you begin to getting a feeling even here she had 1 miss, but when she's 3 or over, she's got a pretty good probability of getting a hit, even higher than her normal good hit rate. So this is the kind of information that is contained in all the data that we have when you expose it in this way. And that's what we're doing. This is just 2 ways of showing the same data. One of these points, maybe this one, just because it looks a little darker, is the same, because you can see there's 4 plus 1 at 3.5. And here's the 3.3. So it's the same data point, just plotted in a different fashion.
Okay, Marty, I think I'm ready to ask my question.
Good.
Too.
Shoot.
And the second point is about, Mark S. Published something about the CRs, and I have that graph if you want to talk about that later. And anyway, my first question is, okay, the upper left-hand chart, I can see that Sunny has gone through hits and misses, and right now she's at 70% accuracy. So one could say, well, her next pick, we're going to predict it's going to be at 70%. One could say that.
Right,
okay.
Right.
I don't understand the difference between that upper left one and the one on the upper right, why that's more predictive, so to speak, or why, I don't quite get that, how the probability of a pick comes in differently from the one on the upper left.
I believe it does, and we're going to monitor that, of course. And I still don't have all of the right plots to do that. But notice they have different kinds of sensitivity. The next time she makes a prediction, this thing is only going to move a little one way or another. She's going to stay at 70% here no matter what, right?
Right.
Okay, I mean, she's already got 13, so the 14th one is going to have a minimal effect. But what if her next prediction comes in here at 2? Okay, fine. We'll be around 70%. But if it also comes in at 8, 9, or 10, I'm going to feel more comfortable that, I'm now using 80%, but even 80% is significantly higher than the 70%. So this gives you more sensitivity, if you will, as long as this remains stable.
Okay, I think I got that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just for everybody else, go ahead, John.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we were talking about the difference between trying to guess whether Cindy's going to be right a week from now, or whether I have a transcript from her in my hands, and saying, well, based on the way she scored this transcript, what's the probability of this transcript being a hit? And that's different from her hit rate. So I could just use her hit rate to guess, okay, what's the likelihood she's going to be right next week? But once I have some transcripts in my hand and I can see the scores, and I want the scores to be wide apart from each other, then I can say, well, based on the past history, when she's had a 3.5 before, then she's been right 80% of the time. So that's a big difference between the hit rate and the LZ score after I have a transcript.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And in some ways it creates another issue for you, because you actually have in your hand 3 or 4 different people with different hit rates. And I'm now thinking, and we will talk in the development group, about the appropriate way to treat that, because you might have a hit rate from her, but you also have a relatively poor viewer. What do you do with that viewer compared to this viewer? And is there a rational, quantitative way to make that sort of judgment based, again, on data? As you can tell, I'm big on data. And, in the past, we've been forced to use our intuition. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm happy to use intuition. But I think, based on my own experience at least, partially because there's a lot of pressure at the time you're using your intuition, that I think a quantitative way to do it is going to turn out to be far superior.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Yeah.
It's really hard because even people with lower hit rates, all of our students have flashes of brilliance.
That's right.
And if Sunny's having an off week and somebody else is having a flash of brilliance, how do you make a decision on that?
That's right.
And we know from hundreds of investment books that if your emotions are involved, or it's harder to make a decision.
That's exactly.
Maybe your accuracy goes down. So this could help with that.
That's exactly right. And let's say that person does have a low hit rate, but this curve shows, even though it starts down here, because this point and this point, it turns out, will always be the same. Okay, because this turns out to be all the data. So notice this is at 70% and that's at 70%. So that, let's say you're looking at a person where this is down at 50%. However, their curve might go up to 60% if they ever had a Z of 10. So you might say, even for this viewer who you consider overall to be weak, there's the possibility that for that particular session, you might still give them, it might not be quite as strong as this, but you still might give them a 65% or something, whatever their data showed. So there could be rational ways of even taking what, in the more global sense, which is this one, which is the only one we've used in the past, you say that person was a weakish viewer, you might say, ooh, on this particular transcript, they're strong. So, that's the...
Marty, do you have a so-called mini step-by-step manual? Maybe on how other people could... No, this is really interesting. How other people could apply it who aren't using Weave. So they could apply it, and I think this would be important for other teams to use it necessarily aren't on we to see if it helps overall. Because again, this is all about Firefly and everybody wanting to make money, so it could be an interesting.
Scott, I agree with you 100%. I'm laughing because that's where I'd love to go and where I'm headed, and that's why I want to set up this development team. I mean, what you're seeing here is a lot of work with no resources to do any of those nice things.
Sure.
In fact, so that's why we need some more assistance.
It obviously could apply to any ARV where there's some kind of target score.
In fact, Scott, why don't you become, you obviously appreciate all this. You ought to come to some of the development team meetings.
Well, I'll be there. I'll be there next week.
Yeah, and the other Scott, too.
Yes, I'd love to be there. I'm actually, Marty, I'm really good at breaking it. This is what I used to do on my last job, was I would break it down and make it very simplistic for everybody to understand and kind of fill in all those little mini questions so everybody can just kind of say, okay, got it, and then run with it.
I would love you to be part of the team, and you could, put together a manual kind of idea. This is, I think that's my last few graph. Well, no, I have a few other closing remarks, but on this topic, the development team is really what I am now soliciting help for, and I've got some people who've already volunteered, John and Scott W. and now you, Scott. That'd be terrific because we need to continue the support at all level, including, and I should have put documentation here for sure, which I didn't put, and it shows you where I'm coming from. My primary interest is in developing the methodology and the approach, and yet I recognize, I'm going to add it here, that it's extremely important because we do want as many people as possible to be using this.
Well, it should be added that anyone that starts a group in we is getting this information pretty much for every prediction on the screen already.
Right.
Because you give an LZ after everybody put in their scores. You give an LZ score for the whole group for that prediction based on
And
so I don't know what to do with it yet, but the information's there.
That's exactly right, and so we need all these things, the validation of the data itself, because I know people have told me, but they haven't given me enough detail for me to correct it. And also when I ever make changes to the database, I really want to make 100% sure that it's because there was a mistake and not somebody's trying to improve their record, that sort of thing. But there's still code debugging. This is all new. This is a real live program development. And then the analysis is where I want to put a lot of effort, but I know other people have said they wanted to see it and they want to do analysis as well. And this development team, will learn how to get access. As part of the team, I'll show you how to get access to all the data and all that. And then lots of new ideas. I have other ways to go with this, many more that I can carry out in the near term. Depending on how many people get involved with this thing. Somebody made a lot of noise, but they might want to develop this as part of this team. Then we have the documentation, which is very important, and it looks like we got someone who will pick that up. And what I am suggesting, and I'm open to modifying this to a certain extent within the parameters of my life, but right now Wednesdays at noon would be a good time to meet, and I'm suggesting we kick this off next Wednesday at noon. So I'm hoping.
Well, Marty, I'm excited. I appreciate you allowing me to be part of it. I'm excited.
Okay, that's terrific. And you can make Wednesday at noon. That works for you?
Well, I'm East Coast, so you're Pacific time,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so 3 p.m., yes, I think I
Okay.
can do that.
Okay, that's good. And Scott W.
Yeah, thank you for not making it 7 in the morning.
Okay, and Lee and
Ditto.
and John, this works for you?
Yes.
And Stephen,
thanks.
how about you?
Yeah, that would work for me.
Okay, so I'm good. Well, this is a really good start, and I think maybe I'll even put out an email and invite anybody else that's interested in this, and there may be someone in our group that even knows R already that would be interested. So, well, I'm very excited about this too, because now that we have a working group of 4 people, this will move ahead a bit faster, and we'll get the documentation and the proofing that needs to go along with all this. So, okay.
I think it's great too. I did want to, if we have time, mention Mark S.'s graph when we're through with this part.
Yeah. Okay. In fact, anybody who wants, this is the last one. You guys have joined the development team, and I think as people understand this, hi Nancy. Oh, okay. And that's funny because Nancy
I don't know why.
talked about wanting to come in potentially as a group manager, because they do get all the benefits of having the data to use as a group manager and making decisions, as well as their people will begin to build up their own histories. And so, anybody who's here or who listens to this webinar, if you want to become an ARVer, we have groups you can get into, or you want a group manager, you can start a new group. Okay, John, what did you want to do? Because then I just have some closing things here.
Yeah. Could you give me the presentation?
Sure.
And I'll show Mark's graph here.
Yeah. Let me give it to you.
So, can people see this graph?
Yes.
It's a little small, but we can see it.
I don't know if I can make it bigger quickly, but well, Mark Samuelson, for those who hadn't seen, posted about statistical analysis he's been doing on We, and he couldn't be here right now, but he said it was okay to present this graph or just to bring it up. And what Mark has been tracking is when the PCR is used, that is the personal confidence rankings, which of course is different from the CRs. But the PCRs, when they were implemented and when they were withdrawn, he says that the stats show that there's a marked difference in accuracy, as you can see here, from April 11th to August 15th with the PCR was very high. And he also says that since, I guess, November 20th or so, 23rd, these groups, the We groups using PCR have been one of our best indicators, our best indicator in Firefly, according to Mark's data. So I wondered if Marty, what you think about this, and also Carlos is here, what he thinks.
Well, my first reaction when I looked at this is, boy, that looks good. However, like all data, it's when you piece it off. I tend to use it from the beginning. In the past, I've used the last 25 days when you get too many data points. He's using this PCR mindset. He believed that's very, very important, and this data tends to support that. I have no problem with that, and PCR is now part of We. It's an optional part. I find most people do use it, but not all the time, and it happens to correlate just as he's put here. So that's all I can say about it. There are other cuts at we that don't look quite as good as this. So.
And then it's interesting because especially Sunny, who you used before as an example viewer, when she's confident about, when she's somewhat confident about her prediction, her rate goes way up. Meaning some people naturally give themselves really high scores, and you don't know whether to trust it.
Well,
but when she gives a confidence, when she's confident, you can really trust.
John, how is this PCR score applied? For example, does a remote viewer, they give their prediction and then they turn it into their general manager, and then at the same time they give some kind of a score saying, I felt really confident that I hit the target well, something like that? Is that how it works?
Well, Marty can best explain this. It's on his online forum.
Yeah, but it's virtually what you said. In other words, after they do the 4 confidence rankings, which I think you understand, it's just like confidence rankings for any ARV, there's a separate opportunity for them to make their own judgment, separate now from the confidence ranking, on which side they think will be the winning side, and then a 0 to 7 confidence ranking of how certain they are of that. So they may have had CRs, and I've seen this, where all the CRs are, maybe what you'd expect, 2s for one side, 4s for the other, and yet their confidence might be a 6 because they have maybe a good intuitive feeling, or some of the matches were so good in their mind that they really feel it's valuable. So it's a way of measuring personal confidence.
Okay.
So what you said, Marty, to go back to that, just to make sure I understand it, is that if some people didn't use the PCRs, even though PCRs were in play, they were optional. So Mark's stats actually don't break it down per individual viewer. So we're not really so sure, are we, about the impact of the PCRs?
Well, it has that uncertainty. I would say, yes, what you said is right, and it turns out I saved that data. In my analysis so far, I am not using it because most of the time it agrees with just the simple counting of the CR greater than 3.5 technique. Most of the time the people do it. His feeling was by having them do it, it keeps them more engaged. It was more of a psychological reason as I understood it.
I think Greg Cato also used this filter. I'm not positive, but he has several filters, and I thought that was one of them and helped him increase his rate. So it may be that this measure, which we're not keeping real track of right now, could in the future play a role. But I think your charts that you just showed are just amazing and great, and I think the focus should be on them.
Greg K. No, just to clarify, Greg K's 0 to 4 confidence level was just like our 0 to 7. And what he did is he broke down that he had a higher success rate when the confidence levels were at the highest level, 3 to 4. But he didn't do it any. That's very much like our difference thing, which is showing the same.
Right. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. But we do have that data, John. And when people want to look at it and do analysis on it, you'll be able to answer your questions.
So another way to look at that number is some people, like I think Deborah and maybe Michelle, they say it seems crazy to me that there wouldn't be some way to express whether they're having a bad day or not. And that might not be expressed in their scores that they gave the transcripts. So if for some reason they don't feel like they have a strong connection, but for some reason they got high scores, they can express that in this personal confidence score.
I agree, and that is one of the. I agree. I always have people put the words, their text box in we as well, and I like them to put those words in there because I read everything that they put, because I do think that that's one of the things I want to do is I want to get a text analyzer that and I understand there's stuff out there that can do that, to get a sense of what words might be indicative and correlate with hit and misses. And I think if people say things like they have a negative day, I have a feeling they'll have a lower hit rate. But this is another way of getting at that. So yes, Scott, your point is very well taken. And I think you also made another point that some people tend to overrank. I want you to know I've seen a lot of these charts now for individuals. Some of them actually curve down. You could tell that the people are getting overconfident. Even this one curves down. When they have the highest level, they're actually doing worse. And I have one person who I want to talk to that has an extraordinary number of them. It looks like they're going on purpose. They've understood now that one of the key parameters is differences, and they are judging to maximize their differences. And I need to talk to them about that, because I think it's important when you do your judging to do it as an independent judge and really judge it based on the TARC system and not try to make your scores higher. You know what I mean?
Right. And to repeat something we went over last December, if somebody routinely gives her inflated scores, that all comes out in your data here, and,
yes.
and you can warn, this score will warn us about that.
Yeah.
That even though they might be putting 6s and 5s for their scores, the real hit rate when they do that is X.
That's right. It'll show up on these kind of plots, like this person, all showing up on one side over here, or over here. So, for the first time, we're really able to get different looks at the viewer's data.
And then you mentioned last time, which is especially true for Sunny, if you look at our histogram chart there, especially at the 3.3 level, you mentioned that some people they know 3.5 is a significant level, and they know it might cause the group to go one way or another, and maybe even some money to be placed. So they're tentative about giving it 3.5. So that's why there are things like 3.3
That's
there.
right.
And especially on her last predictions, we put things like 3.4 and 3.3. Saying, I know it's a good transcript. I don't know if it's good enough to bet on. And ironically, she misses less when she does that. You can see there were no misses every time she did that.
No, you're exactly right. In fact, I saw that transcript too. I went in and looked at the SAGE data, and I noticed she had a 3.49 and a 3. I don't know what the other one. It was very funny because I knew exactly the psychology was going through. On this chart, she came out up here. You see what I'm saying? So Notice on this chart, well, no, wait, I've got to be careful. It was the version, and this is one of the reasons I am looking at the variations. There's another version of this chart, and I print out all these numbers that as a development team you'll get access to, which was a version where CR max was not greater than 3.5. That was also used. And it was on that chart that she came out still over here, where you would say, oh, yeah, she's got a real high probability. So we still have to work out which are the right parameters to use to optimize the hit rate for both that person and for the group. And we have a lot of work to do. I started writing a program I call a what-if program, which allows you to do all that, but it's pretty complicated, and I really haven't had a chance to get into it. But, that's something that I want to do, where to look at all the possible variations and then find out which variation gives the highest group hit rate. Because ultimately what you want to maximize, you want to have each viewer do the best they can, and then you want to combine all of the viewer data like this to maximize this. Because this is what you wager money on. This is what the ultimate prediction is that goes out to the world, to the guy who is using this. Firefly is a perfect example of that.
So this is when you combine the predictions of all three groups for that one day.
Well, and then you go even one step further. That is correct. And then the Firefly manager needs to do, in principle, all the group managers would give the Firefly something like this, a number, and then the Firefly manager then combines all those. That would be the way I would like to see it go.
Okay. So also, like I said, last December, you could turn passes into hits.
Yes.
And you could probably turn overinflated hits into passes. So if for some reason everybody got overconfident at once and they put 5s and 6s as their scores, then this would say it might be worthy of a pass.
That's right. And the group manager now has the information to kind of make a semi-rational decision on that in the probabilistic sense. And it's, I don't know, I can't overemphasize how I think our minds have to really wrap around the fact that the world, and it's not only precognition, the world we live in is very probabilistic in nature. And I think this work just really emphasizes that so much. And you have to learn how to become comfortable with that. And that's a challenge. You get that one miss and you get so upset, and it really shouldn't upset you. You just got to get used to it. What you want is a chart like this, and you get that miss, who cares? That's part of the chart. You're going to get misses. It's all probabilistic.
Right.
The idea is to get up on this level of the chart, like Sunny is. But
right. And the other example of turning a pass into a hit is right there in the colorful histogram chart here. So if you had a bunch of people with Sunny's record and they gave you a 3 or a 3.3, you might be tempted to pass because everything's below 3.5. But your data would suggest, okay, we shouldn't pass on this one. We should make it
for that person. That's really right. That's right. And now, yes, and the only thing I would feel a lot more comfortable about, which we will get, is instead of this being 2, it's 20. This is 20, and this little thing that you're seeing down here is 3, because that's much more statistically significant.
So you have an 85% chance of that being
Yeah. See, now you can say that, you don't want to say this is a 100% chance. That's one of the reasons I maxed it at 80 in my thinking, because with only 2, that's just not statistically significant. But even here, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, you've got 8 out of 9 from 3 and above. I don't think you're quite statistically significant, but that's not too bad. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So, a 3 by itself, maybe not, but you get up to the 3.5, you get up to a 4, and now you're really beginning to feel pretty good about it.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
This is Nancy. Perhaps you've already addressed this, so if you have, then I can listen to the recording. But this data is so fantastic to have it as a learning viewer. Oh my goodness, it would really help to understand our personal experience.
Right.
I would be happy if all of us were using the same method consistently to create this data. So some groups are doing this, and some groups are doing that, and some groups are doing this. But if we all use the same we method, it might be quite a bit more data that is usable.
I wouldn't want to go that far, Nancy. I encourage people to take on we because I think it's a really great technique. However, if it's a self-judging technique, if somebody, for example, really doesn't believe in self-judging, they ought to be in one of the other groups. And I do think it's important for APP to have that as an option.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But
But wouldn't it also work for a binary group and even a binary group that wasn't self-judging?
I think it would. If you can make it work for CAS, seems like it would.
You mean this kind of data analysis? Is that what
Yeah, I think it would work for basic binary. Is that what you're asking, Scott?
Yeah, I think
you
so.
mean to get it in here? Yes, if the group manager were willing to put the data in a format that we could read in, the development group could then bring it into there. Yes.
Baby steps.
And
baby steps.
So that might be for the development group to consider doing.
But you could also have a binary group screen where they put it in live, where at least the group manager puts the scores in live.
Mm-hmm.
And they would get an LZ from it right away.
Yep, we could write that, something like that in R. One of the things I don't have, which I want to get, and this is a to-do for the development team, is you see this data here? It is not what currently is in We that the viewers have access to. Currently, I give the viewers access to the equivalent of this, right? All of you who have been in We, you see your cumulative hit rate, you see all your comments, you see, all kinds of information that you put in as you're going along, because I'm also a believer in what Nancy said and that this is valuable for the viewer. But I think there might be some viewers, in fact, I've had some viewers who said to me, I don't really want to do any analysis on this. I just want to keep doing my remote viewing. So everybody's different, but of course they don't have to look. So, but I do eventually want to get this over to the viewers online. Right now, the only way people can get this is they have to know enough about R, which they don't. And so that's a development task. And there is a program out there called Shiny that is supposed to do that, but I haven't learned that yet.
And I should add that with the modified protocol of CAS that we're using, I do try to come up with a TARG score for most of the transcripts. And I also have the users. I asked the users to give me voluntarily, not mandatory, a self-target score, a self-score after the event's over, after we know who won, after they only get to see the winning photo. I do ask them to give me one target score mm-hmm. based on their transcript against the one photo they see, mm-hmm. and I do hope to integrate that into the We database eventually.
Why do you do that, Scott? Is that for more connection?
A nice side effect is that they do better feedback sessions when they have to score it themselves.
Yeah.
I didn't plan that, but that came out to be
That's
true.
Important. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But the other thing, but because of the modified way, if for some reason the basic question is, if they get a low score in CAS, what's the harm? If they get an insignificant score in CAS, then what's the harm if the judge does look at both photos? Normally CAS wouldn't show the losing photo to anybody, including the judge. But once they've already kind of counted themselves out by getting a low CAS score, low figure of merit, then, it's an open question. What's the harm in the judge looking at both photos? So I decided there's very little harm, and most people agreed, and they wanted to be in the group where I did look at both photos. And then I need to come up with something besides CAS to decide which side they pick. So it's very common that they get a low CAS score, but they'll get a high TARG score on one of them. So if they get a 3.5 or a 4, I judge them. They don't self-judge. I come up with two TARG scores when I look at two pictures. So I think that data could be integrated.
Do you share that with them so they can see what their TARG score is?
I sometimes do, and I sometimes don't. On the very first one, I did. On the very first group prediction, when I sent out the group prediction, I listed all the TARG scores. And I'm sure they found that entertaining. But it takes longer to judge this way, and sometimes I don't even want to commit to showing them their target score. All right, or I'm so pressed for time, I just say I can tell this is below 3.5. I'm not even going to give it a target score. And then I'm intimidated because I don't want to influence their self-target score later. So lately I have not been telling them when I come up with a target score. But if they come back to me and ask and say, was it 3.5 or over, because I want to know if that was a hit or a miss, or if I picked the wrong side, then I'll tell them, because they're trying to self-adjust to see if they're displacing, if there's bleed-through. So if they only see the winning photo with that, but it's not the one they picked the most, then they need to know that they're getting high scores on the losing photo so they can adjust for bleed-through.
So have you ever... Sorry, go ahead.
Then they might want to move out of the group, because I have 3 groups inside of CAS. Like my classic, if for some reason they're getting a lot of bleed-through, and that might be because I'm looking at the losing photo, then they have the option to switch into classic CAS, where I don't look at the losing photo.
That's cool that you're doing 3 side by side. That's pretty incredible, because the data from that is really telling. Do you ever change your prediction based on looking at both sides?
Yes, definitely. So it's almost every week there's somebody who got a low CAS score, who got a high TARG score. So those in classic CAS, those transcripts would have been kind of thrown away and disregarded, and in the modified method, they help produce accurate predictions. And now we have only 50% passes, and we have 75% hit rate. So we've definitely lowered the pass rate.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the talks at the App 2015, so that's great.
Yeah, we'll see how Ed Ney feels about that.
Yeah, really.
The modified CAS protocol.
We'll be your bodyguards.
Thanks. Thanks.
I think he'll be okay with it, frankly.
We need to add you, Scott, as a speaker on those notifications. They're not on there yet. The announcements about who's speaking.
Yeah, make sure Deborah does that. Well, I wasn't sure. Are you okay with that, Scott? You seem to want to be quite as visible.
Well, those aren't even televised anyways, right?
That one won't be a webinar, you're right.
Yeah, I don't mind presenting. It's okay.
Okay, good.
But I always said from the beginning I wanted to integrate the work from that group into the regular, because if people are getting good hit rates, they deserve to have that added to the regular hit rate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and you being part of the development team, we'll be able to get a lot of the work that we're doing. We'll be able to use those numbers somehow, and we'll work all that out. Okay, anything else on this general subject? We got ourselves set then for next Wednesday. Yes, I know who everybody is. So I'll send out a reminder. Maybe we'll start a little Google group with all the names so we only have to send it to one person. And then I just wanted to close really at all levels that I just think, I've been getting very analytical lately, except when I'm doing my sessions, where I then try to set all that aside. But I'm doing that because I'm trusting myself right now that this is the right thing to do, is to really kind of go analytical, because I really believe the next step is to combine the intellect with the intuitive. And I think our next kind of paradigm shift is going to be to bring the best of both of those into a kind of harmony. That's just an example I'm giving of trust yourself, a personal example, but I think this is just true in general. Ultimately, this issue of trusting yourself is just really, really so key. Most people are good people, and it's good for them to trust themselves. Everybody says, no, you need to go out and get expert advice. And sure, you start with that, but ultimately you need to get to where you kind of trust yourself. And Steve Jobs had the courage to follow your heart, your inner heart self, and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. And in this context, yeah, make your misses. Take chances. Be silly. Be imperfect. Trust yourself and follow your heart. Thank you all for coming. If it wasn't for the fact that we really have now a community, and it's clear we've been around long enough, we have a community of people who are really interested in all this stuff. It's just wonderful, and it just really is heartwarming. Any other questions?
Thank you, Marty.
Any other questions, comments? Well, and you're very welcome. As you can tell, I enjoy this. I do have a passion for this, which is wonderful. Okay, I will say keep precogging, and we'll close this then.
Great. Thanks so much, Marty. Wonderful.
Right.
Thanks, Marty.
Take care.
Very good. You're all quite welcome.